to our economy, somehow it's perceived as being bad for the Republican majority. Isn't that sad? That somehow that's the sense that people have. Mr. Speaker, I hope that we can pass this bill, send the American people a message that we can work together on their behalf, send this bill, come back and make a year extended in January or February. With that, I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
Gentleman from Michigan, recognized.
I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman's recognized.
The minority seems fixated on this notion that since the Senate passed their version of the House bill by a vote of 89 to 10, that somehow the House just needs to take their work product, no changes, just accept it, just vote for it. Well, less than 3 weeks ago, the Senate passed the defense authorization bill by a vote of 93 to 7. Did the House just accept that and send it to the President? No. We requested a conference on December 7th, and a week later, that conference report was approved by the House. So there's no reason, other than the Senate's insistence on a month-long vacation, that we can't do the same here to provide a year-long solution to the payroll tax cut and unemployment insurance for a year and a 2-year fix on the physician payments in Medicare, what's known as the SGR, the Sustainable Growth Rate Formula. So vote no on this motion to instruct.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. All time for debate has expired pursuant to House Resolution 502. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to instruct. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I request a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is asked for the ayes and nays.
I ask for the ayes and nays.
The ayes and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, the ayes and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Gentlelady from Maryland, for what purpose does Gentlelady rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A, Paragraph 1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intention to offer a resolution to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows. Resolution, raising a question of the privileges of the House. Whereas an article on December 15, 2011, on the Politico Pro newspaper website quoted the representative from Florida, Mr. West, as saying, quote, if Joseph Goebbels was around, he'd be very proud of the Democrat Party because they have an incredible propaganda machine. I think that you have, and let's be honest, you know, some of the people in the media are complicit in this, in enabling them to get that type of message out, end quote. Whereas Joseph Goebbels served as the Third Reich's Minister of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda in Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945. Whereas Joseph Goebbels openly used xenophobia and racism in his quest to dehumanize European Jewry. Whereas Joseph Goebbels made Jews the scapegoat of German economic insecurity, fostering flagrant anti-Semitism. Whereas the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum reports, quote, that Joseph Goebbels delivered a passionate anti-Semitic speech to the Nazi Party faithful in Munich on November 9, 1938. After the speech, Nazi officials ordered the stormtroopers, SA, and other party formations to attack Jews and to destroy their homes, businesses, and houses of worship. The violence against Jews lasts into the morning hours of November 10th and becomes known as the Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Several dozen Jews lose their lives and tens of thousands are arrested and sent to concentration camps, end quote. Whereas Nazi Germany and their collaborators killed 6 million European Jews and millions of others as part of their final solution. Whereas by invoking the specter of Joseph Goebbels, the representative from Florida, Mr. West, thoroughly belittles the horrors and suffering experienced by the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. Whereas the American Jewish Committee issued a December 15, 2011 statement saying, quote, to make a linkage between any mainstream political party in the United States and the heinous atrocities committed by the Third Reich should be simply beyond the pale, whatever political differences may arise in a heated electoral season. By invoking the image of Joseph Goebbels and the Gestapo, Representative West has displayed a complete lack of understanding of the worst genocidal era in human history. Moreover, he has diminished and trivialized the unique evil perpetrated by the Third Reich through his unfortunate use of language. Whereas the Anti-Defamation League said in a December 16, 2011 letter to the representative from Florida, Mr. West, quote, "We were deeply dismayed by Representative West's remark comparing the Democratic Party's attempts to articulate views to the American people through the media to the efforts of the Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. Such outrageous Holocaust analogies have no place in our political dialogue. They are offensive, they trivialize real historical events, and they diminish the memory of the 6 million Jews and millions of others who perished in the Holocaust." End quote. Whereas the representative from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, wrote in a letter to the representative from Florida, Mr. West, that the representative from Florida should, quote, "help raise the level of congressional discourse in a vigorous debate," end quote. Whereas the representative from Florida, Mr. West, responded back in a letter to the representative from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, that, quote, "the Democrat Party does indeed have a vicious propaganda machine. It espouses lies and deceit, and the master of deceptive information would be truly proud," end quote. Whereas in the repetition of this abhorrent and outrageous sentiment to the representative from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, the representative from Florida, Mr. West, demonstrates not only the willful and malicious misapplication of history, but also his disdain for the decorum of the Congress. And whereas the conduct of the representative from Florida was repugnant, now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives disapproves of the behavior of the representative from Florida, Mr. West, for bringing discredit to the House by offending the memory of those who died during the Holocaust.
Under Rule 9, a resolution offered from the floor by a member other than the Majority Leader or the Minority Leader as a question of the privileges of the House has immediate precedent only at a time designated by the Chair within 2 legislative days after the resolution is properly noticed. Pending that designation, the form of the resolution noticed by the gentlewoman from Maryland will appear in the record at this point. The Chair will not at this point determine whether the resolution constitutes a question of privilege. That determination will be made at the time designated for consideration of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose, the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Resolution 502, I call up H.Res. 501 and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk, report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 501, resolution expressing the sense of the House of Representatives regarding any final measure to extend the payroll tax holiday, extend federally funded unemployment insurance benefits, or prevent decreases in reimbursement for physicians who provide care to Medicare beneficiaries.
Pursuant to House Resolution 502, the resolution is considered read. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Price, and a member to be recognized later. Each will control 30 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, clearly the economy and jobs is the #1 issue for the American people all across this land. And if you ask the folks who create jobs what's the greatest impediment to job creation, they say it's uncertainty. Businesses don't know what taxes are going to be. Job creators don't know what the rules and regulations are going to be. Employees and workers don't know if their job will be lost. Doctors don't know whether or not they're going to be able to see Medicare patients. Patients don't know whether or not they're going to be able to see their doctors. Therefore, the House believes what the American people already know, that more certainty, greater certainty, is imperative if we're going to get this economy rolling again. Consequently, we, the House, passed a bill that provides that certainty. Our bill provides for 1-year extension of the payroll contribution to Social Security, offset so that Social Security resources are not depleted. Our bill provides for a 13-month extension of federal unemployment benefits with real reform, including job training and helping folks get GEDs and allowing drug screening by states for those receiving benefits, should they so desire. Our bill provides a 2-year extension of payments to doctors caring for seniors, for Medicare patients, so that our parents and our grandparents can continue to see their doctors. So the House passed a 1-year extension of payroll tax reduction and paid for it with reduced spending elsewhere, and the Senate, Mr. Speaker, wants 60 days and more uncertainty. The House passed a 13-month extension of federal unemployment benefits. The Senate wants 60 days and more uncertainty. The House passed a 2-year continuation of funding for doctors to see Medicare patients. The Senate, that's right, Mr. Speaker, 60 days and more uncertainty. Republicans and Democrats in both the House and the Senate agree that we ought to extend these items. There's no debate about that. The differences lie with whether or not we get our job done now, or do we punt on fulfilling our responsibilities for another 2 months. The Senate's action is unworkable and unacceptable. Various organizations representing job creators have already said that a 2-month punt is unworkable and costly, therefore harming more job creation. Now, we're ready to sit down with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle and on the other side of the Capitol to get a 1-year extension put in place before the end of this year. That's what you do when there are differences in the House and the Senate. Both sides have passed legislation, but we have disagreements. So now we ought to sit down like Congresses have done for over 200 years and work out those differences. And we ought to do that today, not 2 months from now. This resolution makes it clear that the House supports taking care of middle-class families, seniors, and job creators. It makes clear that the House stands ready and willing to work with the Senate to get this done. If our colleagues on the other side of the aisle support providing relief and certainty for middle-class families and for seniors and for job creators, then they ought to support this resolution. There's a bipartisan support for the proposals within this resolution, and there's bipartisan support for a 1-year extension. I call on my colleagues to support this resolution and support the efforts underway to work out our differences with the Democrat-led Senate and put in place a set of solutions that will create certainty for families, job creators, and seniors. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Without objection, the gentleman from South Carolina will control 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to claim time in opposition as the designee of Mr. Levin and yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, unemployment rates, according to a recent report this morning, has fallen in 43 states during the month of November, the most states to decline since 2003. The media are reporting that the economy has generated 100,000 or more jobs 5 months in a row, the first time that's happened since 2006, before the Great Recession. Mr. Speaker, 89 senators, 50 Democrats, and 39 Republicans have passed a bipartisan agreement to extend the current payroll tax, unemployment insurance benefits, and Medicare doctors' payments for another 60 days so that we can continue to seek common ground for a full 12-month extension and keep these great numbers in front of us. Let there be no mistake. The only way for the members of this body to prevent a tax increase on 160 million working Americans is to pass the Senate's bipartisan agreement. The only way to prevent cutting off unemployment insurance for 2.2 million Americans who are currently unemployed and looking for work is to pass the Senate's bipartisan agreement. Let me be crystal clear. The only way to prevent cutting funds to pay doctors who care for Medicare patients is to pass the Senate's bipartisan agreement. The Senate Democratic leader and the Senate Republican leader demonstrated to the American people that Democrats and Republicans can work together. They passed a bipartisan compromise to get this done. And, Mr. Speaker, my constituents continue to ask time and time again, why can't you guys work together to get something done for the American people? It is a good question. It is a fair question. And the Senate has answered that we can. And it's my fervent hope that we in this body join them today and do the right thing for the American people. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully suggest to my friend from South Carolina that the best way to provide certainty for families and job creators and for seniors is to have a House-Senate Conference Committee work together before the end of the year. And I'm pleased to yield 1.5 minutes to my friend and colleague from Tennessee, Mr. Rowe.
The gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, last week the House passed Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act with the support of both sides of the aisle. The economy is struggling, perhaps getting better, but struggling. The President asked for a one-year extension of the payroll tax holiday for 1 year. We agree with that, a one-year extension. Extend and reform the unemployment insurance plan benefits. We agree with that. A 2-year extension of the so-called doc fix. I'm a physician. I've been here now for 3 years. In the 3 years I have been here, Mr. Speaker, we've had 6 temporary extensions. This would be number 7. For access to care for patients, we must get a permanent fix for SGR, or no patients are going to have access. And I've spoken to numerous colleagues who totally disagree with this 60 days. And a true shovel-ready project, which is the Keystone Pipeline, which will give us access to energy in this continent with one of our best neighbors, Canada. All these issues we talked about are paid for with spending cuts, not tax increases and not deficit spending. The Senate, however, passed only a 60-day extension, the House 1 year. 60 days versus 1 year. The distinguished senator from Tennessee, Senator Bob Corker, just said, Senator Reid should stop this political gamesmanship, call the Senate back into session, and follow regular order, which means both sides of the aisle, the House and the Senate, produce a conference bill to produce better legislation that reflects the will of the House and Senate. Like most Americans, we should be at work this week to finish the business they elected us to do. Please support this amendment.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney.
The gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for his leadership and for yielding. The Senate has gone home for Christmas, and just 5 minutes before I came to this floor, the President made an announcement from the White House that he supported the bipartisan Senate compromise bill that passed the Senate 89-10. And we need to pass it and wrap up this Christmas present for the middle class. Instead of the pattern of obstruction that is constantly coming from the other side of the aisle, we should introduce the Senate bill here in the House and pass it for the American people. The House leadership should allow an up or down vote and extend the payroll tax cut, the unemployment benefits, and the doc fix for the middle class. Without this 2-month extension, 160 million Americans will face a tax hike starting January 1. The idea that it's somehow acceptable to let this happen is to be blind to the economic struggles that the American middle-class families are now facing, and to be totally deaf to the cries for help from the many people, the 2.2 million Americans who will see their unemployment benefits expire if we do not pass the Senate bill. This is an exercise in rigid, partisan ideology that will also result in an additional 48 million seniors being denied access to their doctors. No bill would make everybody happy, but to stop this Senate bill now, one that is so important to so many Americans, just to please the rigid ideology of the very few, it is the tail wagging the elephant, and it is obstructionist to the American people. And it is just in time for Christmas,
time has expired.
And it is indefensible.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton.
Gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank the distinguished policy chairman. I thank the gentleman from Idaho for his even-handed leadership in the debate. and I would ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I voted to send the Senate bill to conference, and I hope that both parties in both chambers appoint serious conferees and really try to come up with a solution to the problem. I do want to point out a few facts that have been avoided on both sides of the aisle. It's really not a payroll tax. It is a Social Security dedicated trust fund tax. Since Franklin Roosevelt and the Congress created Social Security in the 1930s, payroll Social Security taxes go into the system by workers, employers, and self-employed individuals, and then benefits come out. Last year, for the first time, we reduced the amount of Social Security taxes going into the system and gave an IOU from the Treasury into the Social Security Trust Fund. The extension, whether it's for 2 months or 1 year, of that same policy this year is taking $120 to $150 billion out of the system that's real money and putting into it an IOU that we will pay at a date future. It would be like if I went to the doctor and the doctor tells me that I've got lung cancer, and I say, well, what should I do, doctor? He says, smoke more cigarettes. I mean, we paid more out in Social Security benefits this current year than we paid in, and this exacerbates the problem. I would ask that we come up with a permanent solution, Mr. Speaker, and not keep avoiding the problem.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is now my pleasure to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Waxman.
Gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, this has been a terrible year in Congress. The intransigence of the Republican leadership and the Tea Party Republicans has brought us to the brink of crisis again and again. And now we're playing another game of chicken with the lives and well-being of millions of American families at stake.
Gentleman's correct. The House will be in order. Members at the back of the chamber, please take seats. Remove conversations from the floor. Gentleman from California.
Did the Republican leadership in the House just learn today that in the end of this month, in 10 or 11 days, these tax breaks, the unemployment insurance, the physician reimbursements were going to expire? No. They learned about it earlier, so they packaged a bill, and the only way they could figure to pay for it was to take it out of the federal employees, ask the elderly to pay for more for their Medicare, to cut back on spending, never to raise taxes on people who make $1 million a year. The Senate had the same issue before them, and the Democrats there wanted to have a tax increase. They couldn't get that through. So the senators negotiated a short-term extension for 2 months because they couldn't agree to a year. And that passed overwhelmingly. That's what we should be voting on today. Instead, the House Republicans are bringing a tax increase starting January 1 to 160 million Americans, forcing 2 million Americans to the edge of despair as their unemployment benefits run out, and scaring 48 million seniors who worry about their doctors opting out of providing services under Medicare. And to add insult to injury, this resolution seeks to impose the Republicans' extreme anti-environment agenda onto legislation essential to the economic security of the American people. This has been the most anti-environment House of Representatives in the history of Congress, and this resolution is a fitting capstone to this dismal record. House Republicans are holding payroll tax cuts, unemployment insurance, payment to physicians under Medicare hostage to the rapacious demands of the oil and gas industry. The House Republicans want to force the President to approve the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline. They forget that the future of our economy lies in clean energy, not increasing our reliance on the dirtiest source of gasoline imaginable. They would like to hold the pipeline as one of the prices for their blackmail, but they also want to give some other special interest favors. a lump of coal for American families, but at the same time, they want EPA's public health standards, which would prevent up to 8,100 premature deaths, 5,100 heart attacks every year. They want to eliminate those public health benefits that come with clean air. And instead, they want provisions in this bill, which has nothing to do with this issue. They want these provisions to allow more mercury, lead, arsenic pollution in the air we breathe. We've seen this over and over again. They cannot agree on a compromise to pay for anything. They cannot agree on letting something happen without putting in the anti-environmental riders. Once again, the Republican leadership has shown the lengths into which they will go to impose their radical, extreme agenda, sacrificing the public health and welfare of the American people. The Senate at least came up with a bipartisan compromise for 2 months. This House Republican leadership will put us in a situation where all of these expiring provisions will in fact expire, and the American people will be done a great disservice by this action. Yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to a productive and excellent member of our conference, Mr. Wilson from South Carolina.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the chairman for yielding. I want to thank him for his leadership of the Republican Policy Committee and his work on this legislation. Last week, the House passed a one-year payroll extension, which included a provision to override the administration's decision against the Keystone Pipeline, a real shovel-ready project. The President's decision will delay the Keystone project until 2013, after the election, which clearly reveals this is a political, not scientific decision. On August 26th, the Department of State deemed the project to be environmentally sound after 3 years of analysis. In late October, I was fortunate to visit Alberta, Canada, which is America's largest trading partner, and witness firsthand the Canadian oil sand development and the extraordinary environmental safeguards to produce oil in North America. The construction of this environmentally advanced project will create 120,000 new jobs in America. With record unemployment, Americans need jobs now, and I know firsthand that the workers at Michelin Tire Corporation of Lexington, South Carolina, are ready to produce huge earth mover tires, and MTU will produce engines. I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind my good friend from South Carolina that the Keystone Pipeline is in the Senate bill. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Susan Davis.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're here today because the Senate did a terrible thing in the eyes of the House majority. They had the audacity to work together and come up with a compromise. At the request of the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader reached a compromise on a payroll tax cut extension. There were even high fives around Senate Republicans after that Saturday vote. 89 senators voted for it, including 82% of Senate Republicans. The Speaker called it, and I quote, a good deal. But then came the revolt from House Republicans. People are asking, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's a fair question to ask, do House Republicans really want Congress to function? By denying a vote on this bipartisan compromise, it allows them to continue to push their theme that Washington is dysfunctional and does not work. Had the House majority brought up a clean tax bill last week, we would not even be here today. But instead, they offered a bill that was loaded with special interest riders, that was designed to fail, and, in fact, it did fail. The majority claims that it wants certainty with a long-term extension of the middle-class tax cut. Yes, and many here, including myself, we do want a long-term extension, and those negotiations will continue. If the House majority was talking about tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, they would roll out the red carpet. But when it comes to help and support for the middle class, they pull the rug out from under them. It is clear, Mr. Speaker, that we are willing to support a $120 billion tax that they are willing to support. A $120 billion tax increase on Americans fighting to restore the American dream. rather than accepting this bipartisan compromise that is before us today. I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much time remains for each side?
Gentleman from Georgia has 22.5 minutes remaining. The gentleman from South Carolina has 19 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, in all of this debate, I think that both parties have overlooked a critical problem. Both versions of this bill impose a permanent new tax on every mortgage backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. To pay for an additional 2 months of tax relief under the Senate version or 12 months under the House version, more than $3,000 of new taxes will be imposed on every $150,000 mortgage backed by Fannie or Freddie. A family making $250,000, or actually taking out a $250,000 mortgage, will pay $5,000 more in taxes directly and solely because of this bill hidden in their future mortgage payments. This is atrocious public policy. It shifts the burden for this bill to future home buyers, kicks the housing market when it's already down, makes it that much more expensive for home buyers to re-enter the market, and adds to the pressures that have chronically depressed everyone's home values. That's the reason that both the Senate and the House versions need to go back for major revision.
From South Carolina.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is now my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langerville.
Gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 2 minutes. Without objection.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I find it thoroughly unconscionable that House Republicans are preventing Congress from working its will by stifling a vote to support a bipartisan Senate compromise to extend unemployment benefits to the middle class and the middle class tax cut for 2 months. While I strongly believe the middle class tax cuts and other provisions within the bill deserve a full-year extension, the utter intransigence of Tea Party Republicans has made compromise without a self-imposed crisis practically impossible. Now, we could have spent the better part of a year working on this bill and others like it to buoy our economy and help Americans get back to work. Instead, the Republican majority spent most of the entire session considering multiple bills to repeal health reform, rescind environmental protections, and further deregulate the financial industry, none of which helps create jobs for my constituents back in Rhode Island. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have made a last-minute decision to derail compromise on the one bill that economists agree would actually stimulate the economy. As a result, when families across Rhode Island come together to celebrate the holidays, they're going to face the possibility of paying higher taxes or seeing their unemployment benefits expire in the new year. This is unacceptable, and it is unnecessary. Mr. Speaker, Americans are weary of the political games and the broken promises that have brought us to this point. They want a Congress that can come together and legislate in their best interests. Instead, House Republicans are holding the middle-class tax cuts hostage to further their political agenda, despite calls from members of their own party asking them to accept a bipartisan compromise which overwhelmingly passed the Senate 89-10. Mr. Speaker, I urge my Republican colleagues to stop risking the welfare of the American people for their political leverage. Give us the opportunity to pass a 2-month extension so that our constituents have some reassurance that they won't be worse off come New Year's Day. The interests of the American families deserve to be put before the interests of political partisanship. During this holiday season, I pray that this Congress can honor that. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1.5 minutes to a dear friend and a wonderful member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn.
The gentlelady is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Georgia for his excellent work on H.R. 501, which expresses what we as Republicans stand for as we fight to provide accountability for hard-working American taxpayers. We are for certainty for these taxpayers. We are for unemployment insurance reforms. We are for freezing federal salaries. We are for certainty for our seniors. We're for fairness for our doctors and hospitals. We are for jobs for the American people in the form of the Keystone XL pipeline, in the form of Boiler Act and the other bills that will help put thousands of Americans back to work. We all know that Washington takes too much and Washington wastes a lot of the money that it takes. And the American people want to see more of that money left in their pocket. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, part of the debate that is taking place today is about a transition that we are going through, and House Republicans are grateful for the opportunity to lead this transition from a government that is addicted to the taxpayers' money. Yes, indeed, it never gets enough, to a government that is going to be accountable to the hard-working American taxpayer. Now, for some of my colleagues, they may want to call that radical. They may want to call it extreme. They may want to say that it is holding ideas hostage. It is about freedom. We stand with hard-working taxpayers. I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remind the gentlelady from Tennessee that that's exactly what this bill is designed to do, put into the pockets of 160 million Americans an extended tax cut. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Let me thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, we're here because for the last year, the majority could have come down here and we could have had this debate all this time. But at the 11th hour, after they signaled to the Senate, work it out, get a deal together, because we have not done it, the Senate did work that deal out, and now that it has come back, our friends in the House majority have said, not good enough. Conveniently, after the Senate has gone home. It feels like a setup. I don't question motives, but it feels that way. And it goes to the heart of the matter. Is the government here of the people, by the people, for the people, and for the benefit of the people, or do people basically have hostility to government and want to make government look dysfunctional at every turn? The fact is, Mr. Speaker, there was an agreement in the Senate, and it was coming over here, and it looked like government was going to prevail and that we had gotten our act together and worked it out. But before that could ever happen, the people who stand in opposition to good government broke that deal apart. The people who believe that government should be shrank to the size of where it can be drowned in a bathtub could not possibly let a deal for the American people go through, and they smashed that deal. And right now, this year, the clock is running out. The Senate has gone home, and our friends on the other side of the aisle are playing a dangerous game with the lives of 160 million Americans. It's a shame and a disgrace. We ought to pass this bill the Senate sent over here and stop messing around with the livelihood of Americans. I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to yield 3 minutes to our Republican chair of our conference, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Henserling.
Gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, if my friends on the other side of the aisle are confused why we're here, let me enlighten them. It's because the President's policies have failed. In the Obama economy, unemployment has been at, near, or above 9% ever since the gentleman was elected. 1 in 7 on food stamps. Small business startups at a 17-year low. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why we're here today. And so I think almost everyone in this chamber agrees, yes, we want to extend the Social Security payroll tax holiday. But what is so curious to me, Mr. Speaker, I hear my friends on the other side of the aisle say, we need to do it for a year, but we're only willing to vote for 60 days. I don't understand that, Mr. Speaker. And I hear my friends on the other side of the aisle saying middle-income families deserve this $1,000 tax cut, yet they're only willing to vote for $160. And then they say, we have to pass it today. We can't let New Year's Day come without passing this. And yet they won't appoint anybody to a conference committee, and everyone's getting ready to run to the airport. I don't understand it, Mr. Speaker. So the question is, are my friends on the other side of the aisle Are they interested in making a law that will help American families and hardworking taxpayers? Or are they interested in making a campaign issue that they can recycle every 60 days? Now, only they can answer the question. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is inconvenient in tough economic times that our constituents have to work over the holidays. Maybe it should be inconvenient to us as well. We stand ready. We just can't do our job if the Senate Democratic leader refuses to appoint anybody. If the House Democratic leader refuses to appoint anybody to sit down and negotiate in good faith. I'm sorry, it's inconvenient for my friends on the other side of the aisle to work during the holidays. And then last but not least, I hear my friends on the other side of the aisle is we need something that works for the American people. Well, guess what? Once again, they didn't consult with the American people. All of the employers that we hear about are saying this is unworkable. The Associated Builders and Contractors, I quote, talking about their 60-day plan. This sort of temporary fix underscores Congress's uneven, ad hoc approach toward the economy and causes more harm than good for America's job creators. I hear from job creators from my own district in Kaufman County, Texas, quote, the 2-month extension is more hassle than a help. It's impossible to budget and plan for an unknown. Mr. Speaker, if you want a year of tax relief, vote for a year of tax relief. If you want $1,000 of tax relief, vote for it and be willing to work over the holidays. I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I remind my friend from Texas that according to all reports, last month, 43 states registered a decrease in unemployment, the first time that's happened since the year 2003. With that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Times.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my colleague and friend for yielding. I rise because I believe we have lost sight on why we are here. I want to remind my colleagues that we are here to represent the American people. We are here to ensure that as many as possible have the resources they need to pay their bills, feed their families, and maintain a suitable place to live. Today, there are millions of Americans who are struggling and do not have a suitable place to live. Many people are suffering because of an economy that is beyond their control. The bottom line is they need us to do something about it. They need us to extend the payroll tax cut and unemployment insurance for at least the next 2 months until we can agree on how to do it for an entire year. The last thing working Americans need to see is a reduction in their paychecks because we failed to extend the payroll tax cuts. We can today make sure that at least get some assistance for the next 2 months. Then we can reach an agreement on how to do this for the entire year. That doesn't seem to be unreasonable. It's just 2 months. We need to vote on the Senate bill today. And my colleague was talking about not leaving town. You're right. We should not leave town until we pass this bill, and we need to let millions of struggling families and children know that they will have some relief, at least for the next 2 months, so they can enjoy the holidays, so they can really believe in Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And that's all we need to do before leaving here, is to pass it for 2 months. Just 2 months. And on that note, I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to my physician colleague from Indiana, Mr. Bouchon.
Gentleman recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of House Resolution 501. As a cardiothoracic surgeon, I often work through the holidays since, guess what, no one chooses when they have a heart attack. I did my job. I'm here today to do my job, and I'll work through the holidays if that's what it takes. We have 11 days to pass a tax relief bill, along with an extension of unemployment insurance, temporary assistance for needy families, and finally 11 days to prevent a 27% cut to Medicare that will put American seniors at risk for losing their access to quality health care. Seniors rely on being able to see their doctors. This 60-day patch does nothing to create certainty for providers or seniors. In fact, it jeopardizes their care. I support the bill we passed last week. I support this resolution. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on House Resolution 501. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire as to how much time I have remaining?
Gentleman from South Carolina has 12 3/4 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Georgia has 16 minutes remaining.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to freshman member from Mississippi, Mr. Nunley.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the chairman for yielding. I rise in support of the House-passed provisions, specifically the provisions relating to unemployment insurance reform. We passed a full year, we extended the benefits, but we added common-sense reform. Things like strengthening enforcement of waste, fraud, and abuse in unemployment benefits, strengthening work search and education requirements, and allowing states to test for drugs for those that are receiving benefits. It's very simple. If men and women that are working have to pass a drug test in order to draw their paycheck, those receiving unemployment benefits ought to have to pass the same drug test. So I call on Harry Reid to bring the Senate back to work so that we can reach a full year's agreement that includes these reforms to our unemployment insurance.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield to another physician colleague and a colleague from the state of Georgia, my friend Mr. Gingrey, 1.5 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for yielding, and I rise in strong support of H.Res. 501 and commend the gentleman for the work he has done. Colleagues, of course, Resolution 501 restates the provisions in House Bill 3630 that we passed last Friday in a very bipartisan way, sent it over to the Senate. Things like, yes, extending the payroll tax cut to 160 million middle-income Americans for a full year, allowing 99 weeks of unemployment insurance coverage for those individuals who have been out of work for more than 6 months. We do that for an additional year. And last but not least, to mitigate the payment cut, the 27% payment cut to health care providers who need to be there for our senior citizens. We do this all, and we pay for it in a responsible way. Now, let's be serious about the controversy here in regard to this Senate amendment versus our bill, H.R. 3630. And it's time, Mr. Speaker, to end the mendacity. There is not one scintilla of logic in the Senate amendment to House Bill H.R. 3630. The only thing that makes sense is the Democratic majority in the Senate wants to pay for these things by raising taxes on job creators. We in the House want to pay for it in a much more responsible way, raising taxes on nobody, but freezing salary for federal employees, yes, including ourselves for the next 3 years. If the gentleman would yield me additional 15 seconds.
Additional 15 seconds.
And I thank the gentleman. And the sale of electromagnetic spectrum, which will raise some $8 billion and create thousands of jobs. So let's don't make any pretenses about this. The House and the Senate have choices. They can name the conferees, they can come to conference, and they can get this done, or they can let these bills fail and fail the American people. And I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is now my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, instead of doing what's best for the American people, we are once again dealing with the same old partisan politics that has plagued this Congress this entire year. The Senate amended and passed a bipartisan bill that would extend the payroll cuts for millions of workers and families and protect unemployment benefits for Americans while ensuring our seniors have access to critical health care. This Senate version reflects a compromise that was negotiated in good faith. Mr. Speaker, by both Senate Democrats as well as Senate Republicans. It was overwhelmingly approved by 89 senators, including 39 Republican senators. As members of Congress, it is absurd, I believe, that we are being denied the opportunity to vote for a bill that would add certainty to the economy and to the people that we represent. It is unacceptable that some of my colleagues in the House, the Republican colleagues in the House, have once again refused to compromise. Our constituents elected us here to make their lives better, not worse. This latest Republican grandstand will cost the American public dearly. As a result, 160 million middle-class Americans will see a payroll tax increase, and over 2 million Americans, including almost 25,000 Alabamians, will begin losing their unemployment benefits. While I had hoped for a one-year extension, like many here, this two-month compromise is better than the alternative, which is to let millions of Americans suffer economic hardship. You know, it was Martin Luther King who said that the time is always right to do what is right. It is right this holiday season to make sure that the American public enjoy the blessings of this holiday season by being ensured of the protections that they've already so greatly earned. I yield back the rest of my time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Duffy.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
I appreciate the gentleman for yielding. I am sick of the demagoguery. I think it is important that we truly talk about the facts. This is not a debate about whether we're going to extend the payroll tax holiday or not. This is a debate about what kind of extension we're going to get. Is it going to be 1 year or is it going to be 60 days? To be clear, we are advocating for a one-year extension, which is a $1,000 pay cut for a tax break for every American in this country. My friends across the aisle are advocating for a $170 payroll tax cut, $1,000 versus $170. We're talking about Christmas gifts. A $170 payroll tax gift is not a Christmas gift to the American people. $1,000 would be. The only gift I hear being offered here is a gift to the Senate colleagues who want to go home for Christmas. Let's stay here and do the work of the American people. Make sure we extend the payroll tax holiday and make sure we give certainty to every American throughout the country. And I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's now my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Gentleman recognized for 2 minutes.
I think somehow I made a mistake. I came over here to listen to the debate, and it's almost like Alice in Wonderland, like we all fell down the hole here. Up is down is up, black is white is black. I mean, this is confusing to the folks out there. So let's just try to understand where we are at this moment. We sent a bill, that is, the Republicans in this House sent a bill to the Senate that was rejected. Rejected for several reasons. One of them was the pay for. How is it going to be paid for? Ways that dealt, I think, unfairly with workers who are unemployed. It shortened the period of unemployment, not to 99 weeks, but even shorter, to just over 50. And it also went after Medicare recipients, causing them to pay more. It was rejected by the Senate. The Senate put together a compromise. 90% of the senators, well, just short of 90%, 89 senators, Democrat and Republican, voted for a 2-month compromise that was paid for, with the understanding that they would spend the next 2 months trying to figure out how to make this thing last a whole year. We're really far apart on many of the underlying things. And so here we are running up against the deadline. And by the way, if we had a conference committee, we actually had a conference committee, and they came to a conclusion before the end of the year, did anybody consider the Senate rules? There's a potential of 90 hours of debate in the Senate before it could be taken up and passed. So what are we doing here? We ought to think about the people out there and about the foolishness of all that's going on around here. Let's just agree to where the Senate is. We've got 2 months to figure out how to make the rest of the year work. And the rhetoric goes back and forth, and we're not in Alice in Wonderland here. This is about the people of the United States. We have an opportunity to get this thing done only for 2 months. That's not in anybody who's happy about that. But at least we can get it done, and we can come back and deal with some very difficult underlying issues for which there is no agreement at this moment. We need time to do that. The conference committee could surely not do that.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffin.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I think that if Thomas Jefferson had just dropped back into this body, he would think he was Alice in Wonderland, because when he wrote the wonderful Jefferson Manual of Parliamentary Procedure, he made it very clear that we had two bodies in this government, the Senate and the House, and each was to act independently one other in order to come up with what was right for the American people. We are now told today that we are supposed to accept a compromise that the senators compromised on and then left town to go home to celebrate their holiday. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that's appropriate. I think we should do what the system calls for when our founding fathers put it together. That is, they do their business, we do our business, and we do what we think is right. We are trying to do what we think is right here today. This resolution includes many parts. One of those parts that I think is extremely important is the Boilermact part. It had 41 Democrat votes in this House. It has 13 Democrat co-sponsors in the Senate. It is a very bipartisan and popular measure, and I hope we adopt the resolution. Thank you,
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman from South Carolina has 8 3/4 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Georgia has 11 1/4 minutes remaining.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to a physician colleague from Louisiana, Mr. Cassidy.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
You know, I actually again agree with my colleague, Mr. Garamendi. There's been a lot of storm and drang, but there's actually something that we can agree upon here. First, I'll say that President Obama, many congressional Democrats and House Republicans all agreed that 12 months would be better than 2 months in terms of the extension of these things. The Senate disagreed. They did it for 2 months. The Constitution says that if the House and the Senate disagree, the two come together, have a conference, a compromise, common ground is found, and then both houses vote upon it. For some reason, we don't want to go through that process. For some reason, Senator Reid does not want to bring his people back from vacation to vote. Now, I will say that all this other conversation about issues kind of obscures, it's, I think, almost there to obscure the fact that this is about whether regular order will be followed, whether the constitutional method of resolving differences will be employed. Now, I would say that I ask the senators to pay just to pay attention to what the Constitution says, to do the work of the American people. I know it's inconvenient, I know it's a holiday, but this is too important. Let's not give up on the process. I yield
Gentleman
back.
from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Murphy.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Families are doing holiday shopping, planning budgets, balancing checkbooks, so are employers. Now, we're being asked to accept a 2-month plan here, $166 for a family, and a message of trust us and we'll come back. Congress needs to be doing more than rehashing this again. We need to be dealing with unemployment, the deficit, and not just spending more time over 2 months. We're telling families to accept $166 instead of $1,000. For that $166, that's about a week and a half of groceries for a family of 4. For that same family of 4, we're talking about 12 months of gas bills, 11 months of diapers, 10 electric utility bills, 9 months of baby formula, 8 months of cable, 7 months of auto insurance, 6 weeks of groceries, 5 months of gasoline, 4 student loan payments, 3 car payments, 2 credit card bills, and 1 mortgage payment for your house. I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, it is now my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Missouri, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Mr. Cleaver.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I sat in my office and listened to this debate, and the one thing I know is that neither side is listening to each other. Everybody's just trying to say something. The people at home are probably trying to figure out if there's any sanity anywhere in Washington. We're having fact-free debates, and the truth of the matter is that we're putting ideology over logic. I'm not going to be here on Christmas. You can get whatever people you want. You can send all kind of things into my district. we're on the verge of the second holiest holiday in my religious tradition. I'm going to be home. I'm going to be in church. This is sick. This is sick. And the people all over the country, the people in the gallery, they know that they are watching dysfunctionality at its best. I'm ashamed that this kind of thing is going on and the world is watching. All we need to do is wait until a better season so that we don't look as bad. Every minute we debate, our poll numbers drop. It's probably at a point now where they can't drop any further. But can't we stop this and start trying to rationally deal with the business of the public? We're not listening to each other. The media just wants to listen to see if anybody's going to say anything that's caustic. The red meat crowd is waiting for somebody to say something insulting to the other side. We ought to be listening to our better selves. We ought to call the best in us out right now, solve this problem, and go home and be with our families. I'm going to be with my family. You guys can stay here, scream at each other all you want. I'm going home.
Gentleman from